Hello, hello, hello. I welcome you all to this live session by Great Learning. And today we will start off with a new language, and this language is C Sharp. And this is also the first time ever that we are taking a live session on C Sharp on Great Learning's YouTube channel. So all of you folks who would want to start off with this amazing language called as C Sharp, I welcome you all. And now, before I actually start off, what I want is a confirmation from you folks. If you can see me properly and if you can hear me properly. If everything is proper, just let me know. Just give me a yes in the chat and then we can start off with the session. I would need a quick yes. Now, in the meanwhile, when you're giving me the confirmation, what I'll do is I'll just guide you guys through something called as Great Learning Academy. So what you see over here, this is called Great Learning Academy, and this is a free initiative by Great Learning. And as you see over here, we've got tons of courses with respect to different domains. So if you want to learn data science, ML, AI, cloud computing, big data, or whatever your interest is, you can just pick up any of these domains and start learning right now. Also, we have these career tracks. Now, let's say if you'd want the proper roadmap to become a data scientist, you can just go through this data scientist career path. Similarly, let's say if you'd want to become a digital marketer, we also have this digital marketer career path. So you can just click on any of these career paths and also that will be very useful for you folks. Now, if you'd want to know what is the schedule of our live sessions, so today, as you see, it is my live session at 4 p.m. So tomorrow at 12 p.m. we've got Anirudh's live session on Learn Python Step by Step, and then we've got Ritwik's live session on Software Testing Fundamentals at 4 p.m. So all of this information would be available to you on Great Learning Academy, and someone from my team would put up the link of GLA in the chat. Now, let me just go through chat and see if everything is proper. So I see a lot of yeses in the chat and that is awesome. And someone in the chat is also saying all of the courses are free. Yes, all of the courses are free. You do not have to pay a single rupee to enroll for any of these courses. So whatever you see over here, whether it is cloud computing, whether it is big data, whether it is digital marketing, if I just open it over here, so let's say if I open this course or introduction to digital marketing, you see that you can enroll over here for free. So this is the absolute best platform for a beginner to get started with all of these different courses. Now, what I'll do is I will start off with this language called as C Sharp, and before I do that, we would need the IDE to work with C Sharp. So if you work with other programming languages such as Java, C, or Python, you would have realized that we normally use an IDE so that our coding process is much more easier. So if you have worked with Java, then we have this IDE called as Eclipse. Similarly, if you have worked with Python, then we have multiple IDEs such as PyCharm, then we've got Anaconda, then we've got Visual Studio as well. Now, similarly, let's say if you'd have to work with C Sharp, then there is one particular IDE which is very widely used, and that IDE is Visual Studio. And the latest version of Visual Studio is 2019. So here I'll just write down download Visual Studio 2019, and you see this particular link over here. I'll click on this, and you have the community version, professional version, and the enterprise version. Now, since we are doing it just for the purpose of learning, we are not really developing anything. So for us, the best version over here would be the community version. And when you click on the free download, the download would begin, and then you can just go through the setup wizard and you can successfully install Visual Studio into your system. Now, once you download Visual Studio, this is how your first C Sharp program looks like. But what I'll do is I'll just close this out and I'll show you how to start your first C Sharp application. So here I'll just search for Visual Studio 2019, and you'd see that this will take a bit of time to open up, and this is how the home page of Visual Studio 2019 looks like. And now what we'll do is we'll click on this create a new project, and Now, when I click on create a new project, you see that we have all of these different options. So we can create a console application for C#, we can create a console application for F#, we can create a console application for VB. Then we've got different class libraries. And also if I drag this down, you have multiple other options over here. Now out of these, what we need is we have to create a console application. So this is how we can create a console application with the help of C#. So I'll just select this over here and then I'll click on next. Now I'll just give this a random name. So let's just call this project as, what shall we call this? Let's just call this hello, because I can't really think of anything. So let's just call this hello and I'll click on create, and let's wait for this to open up right now. Pranav Raj is asking, game development, any course? So as of now, we do not have any course on game development, but we'll definitely keep that in mind and work on it. So now we had a lot of requests with respect to C#, and we acknowledge your request and we have come with a full course on C#. Also, we will conduct these live sessions regularly on C#. Now, if you want to, let's say, create a game with C#, that is also something we have taken down. And whenever we have the time, we will definitely work on this as well. And this, what you see over here, this is the basic structure of a C# program. Now this, what you see over here, namespace hello. Now what exactly is this? Hello is the project which we have created, and whatever we write would be under this particular namespace. Now, to give you more context of what namespace means, so let's say if there's a classroom where students actually go to study. Now, if that classroom, let's say if it's section A, let's call it section A. Now, if the namespace of that section is A, and all of the students who belong to that section, are part of the namespace A. Similarly, what we are doing over here is we have created a project called as hello, and everything would reside inside this. And by default, your main function, here what you see, this is your main function, and your main function would be under the class called as program. And this also, remember, this would be by default. So by default, your main function would be under this class called as program. And here we've got a default line which just states hello world. I should have to print out something on the console. You can use console.writeLine, and with the help of this, we are just printing out hello world. Now, if I click on this, and let's just wait for the result to pop up. So this might take a bit of time. Let's just wait for a couple of seconds till this comes up. Since this is the first time we are actually running this, so this will take a bit of time. And as you see, we are able to print this out onto the screen, and we have hello world. So this is how, or this is the basic structure of a C# program, and this is how we can print out something onto the screen using console.writeLine. Now I'll just go back and see if there are any questions or any recommendations over here. Rajiv Chakrabarti is saying that his video quality is very low. We recommend you to watch this on your laptop so that you can set your settings properly. But then again, if you are not on your laptop, we can still stream this on mobile on 1080p. You can just choose 1080p on your mobile, and this would be proper over there as well. So folks, I want this session to be very interactive. If you have any doubts, any queries, any suggestions, please keep putting them up in the chat and I will parallelly take them up. So now that we have printed something over here, let's start off by learning the basics of C#. And whenever we talk about the basics, I always start off with something called as variables and data types. And what exactly are variables? Well, you should have to store something. Now, when I say store something, you are essentially working with data, isn't it? And you'd have to store that data somewhere. And if we'd have to store that data somewhere, I would need a storage space. So we call these temporary storage spaces as variables. So here what I shall do is I shall create a variable called as int a, and I'll store the value of 10 inside this. and I'll just go ahead and print out this particular value. And if I would have to print out something, I'll just use console.writeLine, and inside this I'll pass in a. Now let me just click on this and let's wait for the result. And as you see, we have been able to store this value of 10 inside this variable a, and I have successfully printed this out. Now remember, I've told you that a variable is a temporary storage space, which would mean that you can change whatever is stored inside this. So initially we had stored the value of 10. Now I'll just go ahead and make it 20. And let me hit hello. So here, as you see, 10 has been changed to 20. Similarly, I'll change 20 and I will make it 30 this time. And now let me hit on hello. And you'd see that I would be able to change the value from 20 to 30 as well. So this is how a variable works, and this is how we can keep on changing the values which are stored in a variable. So I hope all of you understand why a variable is called a temporary storage space. And now we've understood what is a variable. So here you would have seen that we have used something called as int. Now what is int over here? Int is nothing but your data type. So every variable that you work with in C# needs to have a data type, because what you're doing is you're essentially working with data. And your data can be of different types. You can have integer data, you can have decimal point data, you can have string type data, and you can have boolean type data as well. So here what we have done is here we have created integer type data. And now let's say if I'd want to store a decimal point data. If you'd have to do something with decimal values, then we have this data type called as double. So now inside double A, I'm storing 30.333 and I am printing this out. So here you see we have console.writeLine and I am printing this out, and I hit on hello over here. So here you would see that I have been able to store the value 30.333. Now what I'll do is I'll change this back to int, and as you see, as soon as I've changed this to int, you see this red color line over here, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to store a decimal value inside an integer type variable. So now when I hit on hello, and here you would see that I get this error, or basically this warning. There were some build errors. Would you like to continue and run the latest successful build? I just hit yes, and let's see what do we get. Now we've got 30.333, but the problem over here is this is actually an integer and you can't really do it. So here, as you see, cannot implicitly convert type double to int. So this is the problem over here. And whenever you're working with decimals, make sure that you have double over here instead of int. So we've worked with int, we've worked with double. Now after this, let's also work with strings. Let's say if you'd have to work with character data or whatever is enclosed in single quotes or double quotes, you can use something called as a string. Let's call the string A, and inside this I will store this is Sparta, and I'll go ahead and hit on hello, and let's see what is the result that we get this time. And you would see that we've been able to print this out. This is Sparta onto the screen. Now what we've done is we have stored something inside double quotes, and whenever we store something inside double quotes, that is taken as a string. And I've stored that inside this variable A, and I've went ahead and I've printed that out. So very simple. And then finally we've got a variable or a data type called as boolean. And in boolean we've got only two different types. So one, you've got true, then you've got false. Now true or false is basically 0 or 1, or basically yes or no. So here what I'll do is I'll just type in bool, and I'll call this A. Bool A is equal to true. And now when I hit, actually I need to give a semicolon over here because I need to close this. So always remember folks, whenever you've completed one line, you need to end it with a semicolon. And as you see, I have stored the value of true inside this variable A, and I've been able to print out the same. Similarly, what I'll do is I'll change this and I'll store false over here and I'll hit hello. Now this time you again get false because that is what we've stored over here. And this is how we can work with different data types. Now, let me just go to the chat and see what exactly are you guys saying. Amar Kumar Pandey is asking, can you teach in night time? Amar, unfortunately, that is not our working hours. So, I personally wouldn't want to work beyond my working hours. So that would be a no from my side, unfortunately. But you can check out our other tutorials. So we have a lot of tutorials on Great Learning's YouTube channel and you can definitely check them out. Mohammed Sohail is saying, for print, can we use printf? Let's just actually try that out. Printf, I don't think that will be possible because we do not really have that. And we are working with C# over here and not C++. So you guys would have to understand the difference between C# and C++. Right? So write down console.writeLine and this is how you'll be able to print out something onto the console. Adarsh is saying, please take a session on Flask. That seems to be an interesting idea. So yeah, my team, so someone from my team would have noted that down. So what we do is, whatever suggestions you put down in the chat, so my team members, they take up all of your suggestions and we maintain an Excel sheet of the same. And whatever we can work on, we take up those topics and we work on new topics. So as I've told you, whatever suggestions you have, please go ahead and keep putting up your suggestions or whatever queries you have in the chat section, and we'll try our best to come up with a tutorial or a live session on the same. So till now what we've done is we've worked with data types and variables. Now before I head on to the next concept, I'd request all of you folks to like this session first if you haven't yet liked the video. So see that there's a watching of 38 and we've got 35 likes. Well, if all of you could hit the like button, that would be amazing. And also if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, now hit the subscribe button and also hit the bell icon. So whenever we are uploading new videos onto our channel, you'll get a new notification of our new videos or a live sessions if you hit the subscribe button and also the bell icon. So please do not forget to do that. Now, since we are done with the variables and data types over here, we will proceed working with something called as operators. And we'll be working with arithmetic operators, relational operators, and conditional operators. Now we'll start off with arithmetic operators. So in arithmetic operators, we basically have these things. Let me just put this over here. So we have plus, we have minus, we have division, and we have multiplication. So these are what we have in multiplication operators. Now to work with these, what I shall do is I'll create a variable called as a and I'll store the value of 10 inside that. Similarly, I'll create another variable called as b and I will store the value of 20 inside that. Now I have two variables with me. What I want to do is a simple addition operation on these two, and for that purpose I will write down console.writeLine and inside this I'll just put an a plus b, and now let me hit the execute button and let's just see what do we get. And as you see, we get 30 because a plus b or 10 plus 20 is absolutely 30, and that is what we get over here. Similarly, if I want to do a simple subtraction, I'll just change this and I'll put minus over here. Now let's just hit on run and let's just see what do we get. So this time we get minus 10. And why do we get minus 10? Because 10 minus 20 is minus 20. And then finally, not finally, well, we'll just put in multiplication over here. So a into b. What is a into b? Let me remove this minus over here. So a into b is basically 20 into 10. And 20 into 10 is 200, and that is the result which we've got over here. And then finally I will change this and I'll put a forward slash, I'll hit hello, and over here you would see that we have got 0 over here. Now why have we got 0? Because when we have a divided by b, which is equal to 10 divided by 20, which is equal to 1 divided by 2. And when you divide 1 by 2, what you are actually getting is 0.5. Now 0.5, on the left side of the decimal value you have 0. So 0.5 is basically equal to 0, isn't it? Now, and since both of these are integers, the result which you've got is an integer which is equal to 0. Now, if I want the exact decimal value, what I'll do is I will have this variable as a double. Similarly, I'll also have b as a double. Let me change this to a double over here. And now let me hit hello and let's see what do we get. And this time we see that the result is 0.5 because this time we are dividing to decimal values and not to integer values. And this is how we can work with arithmetic operators. So now that we are done with this, let's just head on to the relational operators. I will remove these. And what I'll do is probably I'll have int a is equal to 15 this time, and int b is equal to 30 this time. And let me just again put in console dot write line, and I'll just do a simple operation. I'll just put in a is less than b, and I'd want to see what would be the result. So now I'll hit on this and let's see what shall happen. So here you would see that I get a true result. And why did we get a true? Because is a less than b? Well, 15 is definitely less than 30. Since 15 is less than 30 and that is true, so that is the result which we've got over here. Now similarly, what I'll do is I'll put in a greater than symbol over here. Now let me hit on hello and let's see what do we get. So this time we get a false. So we've got a false because we are checking if a is greater than b. So is 15 greater than 30? No, that is false. Since 15 is not greater than 30, we get a false value and that is what we are printing out. Then we have something called as double equal to. So you have to understand the difference between an equal to operator and a double equal to operator. So whenever we talk about an equal to operator, this works as an assignment operator, which basically means that you're taking a value and you're assigning it to a variable. But when we talk about the double equal to operator, what you're doing is you're comparing the values in both of these variables. So here we are trying to understand if the value which is present in A, is it equal to the value which is present in B? And I shall hit hello. And we get a false value because obviously 15 is not equal to 30. And then finally we've got the not equal to operator, and this is how we can represent the not equal to operator. You'll have the exclamation mark and then you'll have the equal to symbol. Then let me again select hello, and this time we get a true value because obviously 15 is not equal to 30, and that is true. So these are relational operators, and let me go back to the chat and see what questions are there. Yashwardhan is saying best channel for programming and code learning. Thanks to all of you. Well, this is what we do it for. Our aim is to provide all of you guys really high quality education because we believe that high quality education can change your lives, and we do it for absolutely free, right? So thank you very much. This means a lot to all of us over here at Great Learning. Rajiv Chakrabarti is asking us to make a session on CSS. Sure, we shall do that. So I believe we already have a live session on CSS. So Ritwik would have taken that. He would have definitely taken a live session on HTML. And this is something, if you'd want a separate live session on CSS, that is also something which we can do. Prajwal is asking, I'm a beginner, which language should I learn? Oh, that's a very good question, Prajwal. Now, let's say if you're a beginner and you do not know anything, well, I'd probably suggest you to pick up an object-oriented programming language. And I would say pick up an object-oriented programming language and not pick up C because it's much more easier. And you normally use object-oriented programming languages in the industry. And also, why not actually go a step further and pick up one of the two most widely used programming languages in the industry? So you can either pick up Java or Python. Java and Python are the two most widely used programming languages across different domains, across different industries. So if you're completely new, I'd suggest either pick up Python or Java. Let me see if there are any questions. Vishnu is asking, can I learn C# within a month? Oh, absolutely. So all of these basics, so we have already created a 2-hour video on C#. And I mean, if you want to learn the basics, well, you can learn C# within a day. You can just go to our YouTube channel, search for C# tutorial and just go through the video, right? All of the basics you'll just learn within, within 3 to 4 hours. That's the learning curve over there for C#. And also this would be the case if you already have a bit of programming knowledge. If you're completely new to any sort of programming language, then obviously it might take a bit of time for you. All right. So here what we have done is we have worked with arithmetic operators and we have worked with relational operators as well. Now it's time to work with conditional operators, and here what I shall do is I will create two Boolean variables. I'll have bool A and I will store the value true inside bool A, and then I'll have bool B and I will store the value of false inside this. And now I've got these two variables and I've stored these two values. I'll put a semicolon over here because that is very important, else you'll get an error. Now I've got these two, and as I've told you, we are working with conditional operators, and in conditional operators we've basically got and or. So the and operator gives you the true result when both of the operands are true, and the or operator gives you a true result when either of the operands is true. So here I will just write down console.writeLine, and inside this I'll have A and B, and let me hit on hello and let's see what do we get. We get a false because true and a false is equal to false. Now let me change this A to be equal to false and B to be equal to true. And now let me see if there's any change. Well, this will also be a false because false and the true is also false. And next up, I'll have both of them to be equal to false. And then let me see what is the result this time. And this time again, this will be a false as well. Now, the only case where we shall get a true result is when bool A is equal to true and also bool B is equal to true. So we have set the true result in both of these variables, and I hit on hello and let's just see what do we get. Well, we get a true result. This is interesting because this is the only case we've got a true result, and the AND operator basically works in this way. When both of your operands are true, that is the only case where the final result would be equal to true. Now, let me change this to the OR operator. So this is what you'd have to use. This really straight line, and we'll basically call this as the pipe operator. So you just have to put in the pipe operator to give in the OR symbol or the OR operator. So A or B. And we have true and true stored in A, then B. Now, what is true or true? True or true is absolutely true. Then let me change the value of B to be equal to false, and then let me hit hello and let's see if there's any change over here. Well, this again is true because you just need one of the operands to be equal to true. Now in that case, what I'll do is I'll also have A to be equal to false, and then I'll hit on hello and let's see what do we get. And this is the only case we get a false result. Why is that? Because both of the operands are false, and since both of the operands are false, well, we get a false result. So these are some basics of the operators in C# language. Maruti Kokani is asking, can we run Visual Studio on 4 GB RAM? 4 GB RAM should be enough. I believe the laptop which I'm using, the RAM of this laptop is also 4 GB if I'm not wrong. So this should be enough. Gautam is asking, can you please elaborate more about object-oriented programming language as mentioned for a beginner? Sure. So to understand the concept of this, what I'll do is I will open up a presentation. Let me just open up this PPT tab over here, and let's see if I have that slide. I'll actually open up this Python slide deck over here, and I would have a proper explanation of C# over here. Let me go to the oops page. Let me go back a bit. So what exactly is object-oriented programming? Now, whenever you talk about object-oriented programming, the word which you'd have to focus on is object. So now, whatever you look around you is basically an object. So the laptop which is there in front of you is an object. The phone which is in your hand is an object. The bike which you ride is an object. And let's say if we talk about living things, your pet dog is also an object, right? Or the aquarium which you have, that is an object, and the fish which swim in the aquarium are also objects. Now if you'd have to represent all of these real world objects in a programming paradigm, you would need an object-oriented programming language. As simple as that. So if we want to represent all of these real world entities or real world objects in a programming paradigm, what you need is a object-oriented programming language. And one such object-oriented programming language is C#. And the base of any object-oriented programming, it's constituted by two things. First is class, then obviously it's object. So whenever we talk about a class you can consider it to be the blueprint of a real world entity. So when I say the blueprint of a real world entity, let's take a phone, right? So I've got this phone over here. So now this is a real world entity, isn't it? And what does this phone basically have? This phone has certain properties and it has certain behavior associated with it. And now when I say certain properties, this phone would have a color, this phone would have a cost, this phone would have a set battery life. So all of these are certain fixed properties of this phone. Now similarly, every phone would also have a certain behavior associated with it. So with the help of this phone, you can make calls. And let's say if you have a smartphone, in the smartphone you can watch videos and you can also play games. Now when you combine these properties and behavior together, what you get is a blueprint or a template, and that is what we call as a class. So you can consider this phone or the template of a phone as a class, and the individual entities of this class to be equal to your object. So let's say if I create a class called as phone, then the objects of this phone class would be different brands, such as Samsung, you have one object, Motorola would be another object, Apple would be another object, Vivo would be another object. And this is how you understand what is a class and what is an object. I hope this is clear. Now let's just head back to C#. I will cut out all of this from over here. We have learned the basics of operators. Now let's do something else. Now what we'll do is we will work with flow control statements. And in flow control statements, we have something called as decision making statements and looping statements. So let's start with decision making statements. In decision making statements, we have something called as the if-else statement. So if you are supposed to make a real world decision on the basis of a condition, you can just use this if-else statement. Now I'll just give you an example. So let's say if you have an exam coming up and you give a mock test for the same, and your parents put up this condition. So let's say if you score more than 70 marks in the mock test, your parents will buy you an ice cream. But on the other hand, if you score less than 70 marks in the mock test, you'd have to give another mock test. So this is the condition imposed by your parents. So here what is happening is your parents are making a decision on the basis of condition. What is the condition? The condition is how many marks are you scoring in the exam. And how is it being evaluated? This is being evaluated through if else decision making. So if marks are greater than 70, go out and buy ice cream. Else, marks are less than 70, sit at home, give another mock test. So this is how you're making the decision, and we can use the same if-else statement in programming paradigm as well. So let's do very simple, simple program for if-else. So here what I shall do right now is, again, I'll have two variables. I'll have int a and I'll store the value of 10 inside this. Then I'll have int b and I shall store the value of 20 inside this. So I've got these two variables set. Now I will just check if a is less than b. And this is the condition which I am setting over here. And if this condition is evaluated to true, I'll just go ahead and print out something on the console. So I'll have console.writeLine, and here I'll print out a is less than b. Now let me hit hello. And here, as you see, this is what we get, a is less than b. And now let me change the condition. So here, let me just make it a is greater than b, and now if I hit hello, you'd see that I do not get anything. Why is that? Well, because this condition has failed. Since this condition has failed, whatever is present inside the body of if statement, that would be ignored, and I'll come over here. But I just do not want my final output to be blank. I want to do something else if this condition fails. So here, if this condition fails, I do not tell C# what to do. So if I have to tell C# what to do if the condition fails, then I'll add else. So if this fails, do something else. So I'll write down else. I'll open up the body for else over here. And here I'll write down console.writeLine. Let me just write row if has failed. Let me just put in a semicolon over here and let's hit hello. And as you see, we've got bro if has failed. And this is the result which we get. So this is a basic example of how to make a decision with the help of if else. Now what we'll do is, again, let me delete all of this from over here. Let me see if the number of braces are proper as well, because I do not want a problem later on. So I've got int a equals 20, int b equals 20, and I'll also have int c equals 30. And I want to find out which is the biggest number out of the three using if-else decision-making statement. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So what I'll do is I'll start off with a, and here I'll check if a is greater than b, and if, or let me just put in over here, if a is greater than b and a is greater than c, then what we'd have to do is I'd have to write down console.writeLine. I'll just write matcha a is the best, right? So if a is greater than b and a is greater than c, I'll just print out matcha is the best. Then let's say if this is not true, then I'll have else if. Here I'll check if b is greater than a, and I'll also check if b is greater than c. And if this is true, I'll write down, let me just write this properly, I'll have console.writeLine, and here I'll write, let's say, b to the rescue. And also if this fails, I'll just have one final else statement, and here I'll have console.writeLine, and here let's just put in C rules the world. Let me put in a semicolon over here. Now let me hit on hello and let's see what do we get. It seems like C does rule the world. Interesting, isn't it? Now what we've done basically over here is we have used if else. So first we start off with if. We check this condition, this has failed. Since A is not greater than B and also A is not greater than C, we have a false over here, we skip this. Then we come to if else. Then we check if B is greater than A. Well, B is greater than A, but is B also greater than C? No. So true and false is equal to false. So that's why we skip this. And then we finally come to the else, and then we print out C rules the world. And this is how we are working with if else statement. So very simple example of how we are working with if else statements. Amar Kumar Pandey is saying, due to network problem, I not listen anything. What should I do now? Amar, nothing to worry about. Well, you can always watch our session whenever you have a proper network, because all of our live sessions are uploaded as it is on YouTube. So whenever you have a proper network, you can definitely watch this video again. Rajiv Chakrabarti is asking, why is object-oriented programming language better for beginners? Now, when you say better for beginners, no, I'd say, see, beginners, when you're beginning programming, I'd recommend you to learn something which is used in the industry. So in the industry, no one uses procedural programming. So people either use functional programming or object-oriented programming, and more widely object-oriented programming than functional programming. And I'd say people using procedural language or procedural programming paradigm is close to zero. So focus on something where you're actually learning something which is industry relevant, isn't it? So focus on languages such as Python, Java, C#, and other languages which are object oriented, so that you have a much wider scope of knowledge and much wider applicability when you're looking to get into the tech side of roles. Right. So what we have done over here is we have looked at the basics of if else statement. Now I'll also delete this entire thing, and we shall start off with looping statements. And in looping statements, we've got two looping statements. We've got while and for. Let's just start off with while. Now, before I start off with while, let me give you an idea of what a looping statement does. So, whenever you want to repeat a particular task, now how do you do it? So, let's say if I have to print down the numbers from 1 to 100, do I manually use console.writeLine 100 times and I'll print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going on till 100? Well, that is stupidity. Now, instead of using console.writeLine 100 times and printing out a particular number over there, what I'll do is I will use a while loop or a for loop. And using a while loop or a for loop, I can iterate using that loop and I can print the numbers starting from 1 going on till 100. And 100 is not the limit. You can print up to 1,000, a million, a billion, whatever you'd want to print out. So what I'd like to do is I just like to show the basics of this. So I'll have int I, and inside int I, I'll have the value 1. Then after this, what do we want? I would want a while loop, and inside while I would just want to check if I is less than or equal to 5. And while I is less than or equal to 5, I would want to print out I itself. So I'll have console.writeLine I. And after this, I'll have I is equal to I plus 1. I'll put a semicolon over here and let's just hit hello and let's look at the result. And as you see, we have been able to print out the first 5 numbers using the while loop. So what is happening over here is initially value of I is equal to 1. So we check if I is less than or equal to 5. Yes, I is less than 5. Since it is true, I enter the while loop. And inside the while loop, I just go ahead and print out 1. After that, I's value is incremented, it becomes 2. Now after I becomes 2, I go back and I again evaluate this condition. So is 2 less than or equal to 5? Yes, that is true. Since that is true, I can again enter this loop and I'll have console.writeLine and I'll print out 2 as well. Then again I'll have I is equal to I plus 1, 2 becomes 3. I'll go back, I'll check if 3 is less than 5. Yes, that is true. Since that is true, again I keep on repeating the same task until I becomes 6. Now once I become 6, this condition fails because 6 is not less than or equal to 5. And when this condition fails, I come out of this loop, and what I would have printed onto the console is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So as simple as that. So this is our while loop. Going ahead, we shall work with the for loop as well. And for the for loop, I'll have the syntax. Inside this, I'll write down for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, and then I'll just write down I plus plus. And inside this, what I'd want to print out is, let's say, I would just want to print out a star inside this. I want to print out a star 5 times. And let me just hit on hello. Let's wait for the result. I'm not sure why is this taking so much time. Let me hit on hello again. Alright, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Yes, so what I've basically done is using the while loop, I've printed 5 stars. So initially I value is 0. So is 0 less than 5? Yes, that is true. Since this is true, enter the loop, print out star. Go back, increment I becomes 1. So is 1 less than 5? Yes, that is true. Since this is true, enter, print out a star again. Go back, increment I is 2. 2 is less than 5. 2 is less than 5, enter the loop, print out a star. Keep on doing this till i's value becomes 5. Now when i's value becomes 5, compare this. So is I equal to 5? No, that is false. So is 5 equal to 5? So I has to be less than 5. So when i's value becomes 5, it is not less than 5. And that is why this condition fails, and then you exit this particular loop. So these are some basics of while loop. And again, let me go back and see what are some questions which you guys are saying. Roshan is asking, what is the difference between interface and abstract class in C#? Now, interface and abstract class, again, that would be a bit of advanced concept. So what we'll do is, we'll probably cover arrays today as well, and if time permits, a bit of methods. So object-oriented programming and abstract classes as well as interfaces, that is something we will cover in the next class. So to give you guys a context, in object-oriented programming, we have something called as an interface. Now, why do we have an interface? Well, there would be certain cases where, let's say you just need a predefined template. Now, in that predefined template, you do not have anything. It's just a predefined template. It's just blank, right? And there'd be another class which would be implementing this template and using it for something else, right? So this is a base idea of why an interface is used. So now what we shall do is we are done with loops. So what we'll do is we'll work with arrays right now. So I will delete this entire thing and let's start with an array. So whenever we talk about variables, the problem with variables is you can only store one value at a time. But what if I'm supposed to store multiple values at a time, right? What if I want to store multiple integers into a same storage object? So these are the cases where I would actually require an array. Now what I'll do is I'll write down int, then I'll give in parenthesis, and I'll give in a name over here, and I'll have curly braces, and I will write down 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So what I have basically done over here is I have created an integer array which has the values 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So now what I'll do is I'll have console.writeLine, and inside this I will pass in a, and I'll execute this. This is the result which we get, system.end32. Now why are we not able to print out these individual values? So if we are supposed to print out the individual values, we would need a for loop. We can't just print this out with a simple console.write line. So I'll have a for loop. Inside this, I'll write down for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, and we'll have I plus plus. So this is our loop. And inside this loop, what we will do is, what are we supposed to do? We are just supposed to print this out. So I'll have console.write line, and I will have a of I written down over here. So initially i's value is 0. So first we'll be printing out a of 0. And also remember that whenever we are talking about an array, the indexing in an array starts with 0. So here at index 0, or to make it more clear, let me change the values over here like this. So I'll have 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. So at index 0 we have the value 10, index 1 we have the value 20. Index 2, the value is 30. Index 3, the value is 40. Index 4, the value is 50. So this is how we are storing values in this array. Now, what I'll do is once I've stored the values, I'm printing out the values. So to print out the individual values, I have a of I. So initially this is a of 0. So a of 0 is 10. We'll print it out. Then again, i's value is incremented. I becomes 1. So we print out a of 1. A of 1 is 20. We print it out. And this goes on till i's value becomes 5, and when the condition fails, we exit out of this. So let me just go ahead and execute this, and as you see, we are able to print out 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50, which are basically the values which are present in this array. And now, also what we've done is we have passed in the values directly inside this. Now let's say if I wanted to pass in the values inside this array using a for loop as well. So here I'll write down int a is equal to new int, and inside this let's say given the size of this array to be equal to 5. What I'm doing here is I'm creating an integer array, and I'm telling the compiler over here that, hey, you'd listen, I'm creating an integer array, and the size of this integer array is 5, which would mean that you can store 5 integer values inside this. Now, how you store values inside this is totally dependent on you. So I've just given you this basic template or a basic definition of this array called as a. Now you can do whatever you want to do with it. So how do I store the values inside this? Well, I'll have another variable called as n, and let us store the value of 100 inside this. Now what I'll do is I'll have a for loop, and in for loop I'll write down for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus. Inside this I would want, what would I want? So let's say I would actually want to print out the value somehow. So let me just have, or what I'll do is I'll just take the values as they are inside this. Let me just write in cout dot, this is actually console, so this will be console dot read, and inside this I'll have a of I, or let me change this and I'll have something written over here, and I can have a of I over here, and I'll actually remove console.read inside this. So I'll just write down a of I is equal to, let me put this as n, and after this I'll have n is equal to n plus 10. Let me just write down n is equal to n plus 10 over here. So here what I've done is, initially i's value is 0. So at a of 0, I'm storing 100. Then I'll increment n. So n becomes 110. Now I go back, i's value is 1. So at a of 1, I'm storing 110. Now Again, n's value is incremented, n becomes 120. Then we go back, I is also incremented, I becomes a of 2. So I becomes 2, then we have over here a of 2. And in a of 2, we are storing 120. So a of 0, 100, a of 1, 110, a of 2, 120, a of 3 would be 130, 140. So this is how we'll progress. Now once we store all of these values, I'd have to print them out. And if I have to print out those values, again, I'll take another for loop over here. So this will be equal to int I is equal to 0, I is less than 5, and I plus plus. And going ahead, I would just need a new write line. So I'll have console.writeLine. And I would just have to print out a of I again over here, and let me just hit this. So let's see, why is this again taking so much? Right. And as you see, using this loop, we have created an array where the values were these, and also we have printed them out using a for loop again. Ashish is asking, can we write a.length? Let's actually try that out. What I'll do is I'll probably have, since I have created the values over here, I'll have console.writeLine. Let me write this properly. So I'll have console, why don't I get this properly? Console.writeLine, and inside this a.length. Let's see what do we get when we have a.length over here, and let me hit hello. Let me run this again, and well, seems like length actually works. So this tells you that the length of the array is 5. This is interesting, and thank you for asking that question. What if the values are printed on a single line with one space? So in that case, what we can do is, instead of write line, I can just use write. So if you'd want to print out these values with a space instead of a line, you can just use console.write. And then you give in the values over here. Now hit on hello. And here you would see that this is the length of the array, which is 5. And here what we've done is we have printed the values with a space. So here Jayashree is asking, why are you using another for loop for printing the value? Well, we can actually do it in the same, but then again, it's just much more intuitive to read, isn't it? So whenever you talk about code flow, make sure that your code is modular, in the sense that you understand what is one for loop doing, what is another for loop doing. So here it is very clear that from this for loop, I am just assigning the values, and in this for loop, I am printing out the values. So as simple as that. So folks, I guess this would be it from my side today. And whatever new topics are to be covered, we'll cover that in the next session. So thank you very much for attending, and have a great learning.